Hello, everybody, and welcome to Music Industry Insights Worldwide. Today we have Terry with us. Hi, Terry, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you today?
All right, thank you very much. Thanks for asking. Do you want to tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself, where you're
Yeah,
from? You do.
absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on today. I'm really excited to be able to have this great conversation. So again, I'm Terry Gresham. I live currently in Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States, by way of Buffalo, New York, which is where I was born and raised. Made a quick little pit stop for a couple of years in Boston before settling in Atlanta, where I've really been able to kind of have a music career really kind of take off over the last several years.
And Atlanta's a massive place for music at the moment as well. Like it's been a cultural hub for African Americans, especially, right?
No question about it. Yeah. It's kind of a who's who of artists that have come out over the last, I'd say, probably 30 years.
Yeah,
And, you name it, all the way from, LA and Babyface, of course,
yeah,
Outkast,
yeah,
Ludacris, it's again, it's a who's who. Everyone who I think has had an influence in R&B and hip hop music in particular, but I think just pop music in general has really, I think kind of made that foundation for what they've been able to do musically and culturally because of their roots in Atlanta.
absolutely. And how long have you been in music and how did you get into it in the first place?
So that's an interesting story. So I've been singing since I was 5 years old.
Yeah,
So like many singers, I started in the church. You do a bunch. You do all sorts of choirs and talent shows and things where you're in school kind of coming up and you start to kind of learn and sort of get a little bit more involved in some form of music, even if it's just learn this song, sing it, and see what happens. I started kind of taking it seriously when I was about 12 or 13 years old. I participated in this talent show and while I didn't win the talent show, and actually I did the show with a couple of neighborhood friends. We didn't win the talent show, but I ended up meeting this guy who I think ultimately kind of wanted to take me under his wing and kind of develop me and have me, turn into a more established artist.
yeah,
We
that's really,
spent a lot of time just kind of going over all sorts of things musically. He would just play chords and just ask me what I heard.
yeah,
And, when I'm 13, 14, I don't really hear much other than the root note, other than the melody.
yeah, I get
But
you.
as I get older and I continue to work with him, my ear starts to get really, really sharp.
Yeah,
And then eventually I ended up connecting. He brought in some older women. And mind you, I'm 16 at this point and I'm working with some maybe 30, 35-year-old women who were much more established, had done a whole lot more. And in the midst of our, kind of our interaction and engagement, they're also putting me on to different artists. So I'm kind of getting sort of a crash course in
yeah,
really kind of music history all along the way, as well as in music theory too.
yeah,
Things that I never anticipated that I would get from just kind of going in and just, starting to kind of learn from this guy. And I got exposed to different singers and other musicians that I, never imagined I would have been able to learn about on my own. This is also at the same time when a lot of the vocal groups that we know today are really starting to hit. So the Boys to Men, the Jodeci, the Shy, the Silk, Mint Condition. So all of these artists, while I'm also getting my ear trained and really getting a better understanding of what I want to do musically,
yeah.
they're also coming out and having an impact on me and kind of what, I feel like I want to do as an artist. And so that really kind of laid the foundation, number one, for what I wanted to do and how I wanted to get on stage and perform. But then number two, for what a lot of my music sounds like, very soulful, very melodic, lots of harmony, lots of intricacies that kind of go in and out musically. And so it's just something that I think has really just been a foundational thing for me. Obviously, bringing that back to, the foundation where, I built my career was obviously working in the church and, doing a bunch of choirs, chorales, solo talent shows, all of the like. Everything just kind of came together. And as I've really begun to establish
Yeah,
my independent artist career,
yeah,
I still kind of look back to that foundation as what I've been able to do in order to be successful up to this point.
very inspirational. Thank you for sharing that with us as well, Terrence. Welcome.
Thank you.
now. Yeah, thank you so much for that. I think it's really, really important because you're from a certain background. We've experienced so many different genres, so much expertise and experience that you can bring that into your own creativity and your own style, right?
That's right. Exactly right.
I love that. And what kind of challenges and barriers have you faced accessing the music industry?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first challenge is that I've never really been there's levels to formal music education.
Yeah,
Um, I didn't uh, I went to school, I went to college, but I didn't go to college and study music. I don't have a degree in music. I took a couple of music classes, but I didn't take any sort of formalized, you're going to sit down and you're going to learn the scale and you're going to learn how to read music and how to play a particular instrument. So there's that one deficiency that I have. Although again, I'm just forever a student of the game, and
yeah,
I'm always going to continue to learn and try to get as much as I can
yeah.
out of what I hear and who I'm inspired by and the like. So I think that's one thing that's definitely kind of holding me back. I think the other piece is that while again, I've done this for a number of years and I've kind of got, sort of a foundation for what I have done and what I want to continue to do.
Mm.
I'm still there's so much that I don't know
Yeah,
that I'm
right.
also at a point where it's like, how much do I want to invest in trying to continue to move forward, or do I want to just kind of say, all right, I know what I know, not taking anything away from the things that I don't know, but do I want to try to say, okay, let me just sort of plateau here and just start to do things that I love and do things that I'm comfortable with. So I kind of go back and forth between, do I want to learn how to play piano, or do I want to just settle in and say, okay, let me just, focus on, what I know. Do I want to get more advanced vocal training so that I can become a stronger vocalist? Or do I say, okay, here's where I am. I'm comfortable with what I'm doing. So, there's a little bit of that back and forth, and a lot of musicians, I think, go through that same type of kind of push and pull where they're wondering, what's the next step? What's the next level that they can take in their career? Or are they comfortable sort of where they are and then just say, okay, let me just, either put out another project or work on this other type of thing. And not that you're necessarily settling, but you're also looking at the reality of, the music industry as it is right now, and you're saying, do I want to be a part of this, or do I want to just say, all right, here's where I am. I'm comfortable with what I'm doing, and I'm okay with just kind of being, known around my local circles or whatever the case may be. So,
Think that's quite a good background that you're coming from actually. But I think it's like anything really. If you want to stay comfortable and stay where you are, you're not going to have any pain. You're not going to grow.
hmm
You're going to
hmm
stay where you're at, right? And I think it's about progression and growth and
right.
also perseverance and training. It's like if you
hmm
want to be a good singer, you've got to train. If you want to be a good athlete, you've got to train. If you want to be a good anything, you've got to train and you've got to stay at it, right? So I don't
Yeah.
think any time where you should be taken off and say,
hmm
I'm not good enough, so I'm going to stay here. Because I think there's always room for progression and there's always room for growth. And if you
Right.
want to stay, if you want to stay and say, okay, I'm going to stay here, then you're not going to grow and you're not going to improve. And I don't think any artist would ever say that, to be quite fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially in the main industry, I don't think any artist wants to stay where they're at. They always want
Yeah.
to progress.
Yeah. And, it's funny you mentioned, being an athlete. I'm also a competitive distance runner.
I thought you might
And
be.
so I
So,
know I know what it's like to, get out there and try to push yourself to do more, try to push yourself to go further,
yeah,
to that one extra mile. You can do it, you're capable. And, I try to do that and apply that same principle to again to how I can progress musically. It may be a note that I feel like I'm still capable of hitting, or I want to try to do it in this show. How is this going to turn out? Or,
yeah,
can I write one more line to this song, or whatever the case may be, just to try to, again, continue to push myself to make sure that, I don't look back and say I could have tried harder or I could have done this, even
yeah.
if I do decide to say, all right, here's where I am and I'm going to settle in this lane, at least knowing that I'm going to put 100% max effort into making that happen.
Exactly that. And what's your thoughts and feelings around equity, diversity, inclusion at the moment? especially in music and what you're doing? Do you find you're supported? Is there enough representation, visibility, education for the youngers? Do you think we could do more?
Yeah, yeah. I'm really glad you asked that question because in addition to being heavily involved in music, I also I'm very much involved in education in terms of kind of my day job and my day focus. And so with that, I have actually over the last 10, 15 years or so had a very kind of strong foundation in DEI related initiatives. So I've been not only working in the university, serving as co-chair of various DEI committees, serving on different boards, obviously leading DEI recruitment initiatives for universities. So I've been very much involved in that aspect of while it is the education industry, a lot of those same principles apply across the board, and music is no exception. I think from the industry standpoint, there's a lot more that we can do to support equity and inclusion across our respective industries. Um, I think first and foremost, I think you're starting to see a little bit more of a what's the best word to describe it? I guess a little bit more of acceptance and understanding of artists that come from various backgrounds, but knowing that you can be who you are and be just as comfortable being in your own skin as an artist, as an outward facing artist, as you are around your people and when you're in kind of that sort of private space. And so I absolutely 1000%, I'm an ally and I support anyone, who wants to come out as a musician, who they are, what they, choose to do and how they want to present themselves, both again as an outward facing artist as well as whatever they want to talk about in their music. So we've come somewhat of a long way, but there's certainly a long, long way to go in terms of ensuring that there's much more equity and inclusion across the industry. And some of that is also, I think, kind of you have to put the focus on some of the record labels and some of the other entities that have a hand in making sure that media and those areas that make sure that our music and our presentation of our music is put in the correct frame of light as well. So there's a lot more that we can do, but I think that we definitely, I think, have come a long way over the last 50, 60 years.
I do think we have, but I also think we've gone backwards in other ways, like contracts. For example, I think a lot of artists have been exploited. They are being used. A lot of artists
Mm,
don't make money. You know,
yeah, yeah.
different sports where you get invested in from a young age. You've got academies, you've got, equipment, you've got gyms, you've got trainees, people to help
Hmm.
you. When you're in a creative sector, you've got no one to help you. You're on your own. Even if you do get a scholarship and you're in the right groups, if your family's not, both my parents are disabled, unfortunately.
Mm,
I come from a disadvantaged background myself. So have
hmm.
that, stability behind me isn't always there. But a lot of that
Yeah.
raw talent actually comes from those backgrounds, as you're aware yourself.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
tell you the difference is like what I struggle with is in music is there are groups of people and sometimes you get segregated and you get put over here because you're from a certain group
Yeah,
rather than just being allowed to be yourself. You
yeah,
know what I'm saying? And I find that can be a struggle too. So
yeah,
advice to artists that, struggle with that.
yeah. No, you make a fantastic point. And and I think for a lot of us, when we think about music, a lot of times and not even getting into to your point just yet, but just looking at it from the surface, we tend to look at pop music or popular music in general. Of course, R&B, hip hop, rock, those areas are what we consider pop music, but we're not necessarily always thinking about how someone might be pigeonholed in a certain area if they want to play classical music as opposed to playing um, you know, Americana or another, not as
They're all part,
popular genre.
right? They're all part of the
Hmm.
industry, and certain parts of the industry are grown in different areas in different ways.
Hmm.
Also,
Hmm.
into those, and you've also got to be innovative. You've got to be different. You've got to be unique. You have a personality. It's not as simple as just running a race and winning. you know,
Right.
and this is part of the thing, like as a trans woman, I was good at sports, I was good at music, but I
Hmm.
do
Hmm.
sports. I've never said that was fair. I don't think that was equal. I don't think that's representative. I don't agree with that. I
Yeah.
think we should
Yeah.
have our own sports in the first place. So some of the things that my own community has also had to deal with is sometimes we get that visibility, but with
Hmm.
that visibility comes a lot of hate. And I'm sure you
Yeah.
had to experience that as you were growing up and as your
Yeah.
community evolved. The more you get,
Hmm.
the more you get spotlight on your own community, the more hate you get with that.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's not always the right representation, or it's misrepresented. Do you see
Hmm.
where I'm from?
Yeah, I do. I do. And then, and I'll be honest with you, it's challenging from time to time, because yes, I have experienced different forms of discrimination, but also I recognize that I do have, areas where I am privileged. And I recognize that. And again, this is something that I've learned over the years. I probably, when I was 20, I wouldn't have looked at it from the same light, but recognizing it today, I can see how, I can be in a position to be able to use some areas of my privilege to be able to help to advance those in certain areas who, may need to have their light shown even brighter. And, at the same time, knowing that there are going to be areas where, I've been marginalized. I've come from, certain, in fact, I think about, and we kind of, when you asked me this question, kind of how I started my musical journey, one of the things that I vividly remember was being in the sixth grade and going up to the music teacher and saying that I wanted to learn how to play the trumpet. And I was kind of brushed off.
Trumpet.
And I
Really?
didn't, yeah,
Really? I'm so
yeah,
sorry. Sorry.
yeah. And I kind of, it sat with me, but I didn't think too much about it. And I've over the years, I've kind of learned that I'm not always the one that's going to kind of sit with something negative. I'm going to kind of, sit with it for a day or two, and I'm just going to be like, okay, well,
Yeah.
let me just kind of move forward with it.
Oh, absolutely.
But it was wrong. It was wrong. I should have at least had the opportunity to try it.
Yeah.
And if I didn't like it, or if I wasn't good at it, fine. But I should have never not had an opportunity to even sit and see whether or not I could be successful with it.
Give people a chance and don't judge a book by its cover because a lot of
Yeah.
people, it's what they see, what they hear, they'll make an assumption based on that rather than getting to meet someone or know the person better than that. Do you see where I'm coming from?
There it is. That's exactly right.
Oh, she's great. She's cool. I love it. And I'll tell you what, the other thing is as well. I'm really good at networking and meeting people. But when I go into a room, I've got to meet all those people and I meet them all and saying hi. And I'll leave.
Hmm.
But sometimes I can leave and I'm like, oh my God, I need a whole day's rest now. Because I've
Hmm.
literally just spent out all my energy meeting these people and
Yeah,
putting
yeah.
energy in. And if it wasn't for
Hmm.
putting that energy in, they're not going to come up to me and say hi.
Yep, yep. I know
So
what you mean.
that is energy that I have
Hmm.
into every single person that I speak to. And that can be tricky, especially when certain people might be curious. They might be, I don't know
Hmm.
how to explain it. You know, there's different ways and different in different scenarios, but sometimes it's curiosity, sometimes it's never met someone like you, sometimes it's, oh my God, I don't know what to do, or fear. You know, so all of
Hmm.
those things are balanced into it and having to juggle that all the time. And just
Yeah,
wow, on top of that, it can be a
yeah. Yeah, I hear exactly what you're saying. And I think there's probably kind of an outward facing sort of approach that you have to it.
yeah,
But then when you have to sit with it and, it's just you're by yourself, you're in your room and you're just kind of, thinking about what the
right.
next day is going to be or what this past day is going to be like. I can only imagine how challenging that is to have to kind of sit and deal with that. And no, from a day-to-day basis, you have to muster up enough energy to be able to respond to everyone's curiosity or say, if someone kind of comes at you in a negative light, how to combat that and how to overcome that. And yeah, it can be a lot. I can only imagine, it can be quite a bit.
Terry, and you know, I'm sure you've been through it yourself as well. I think sometimes it's not even intentional. I just
Right.
think sometimes it's just the way it is, and being different isn't. You know, I think sometimes we're put in a spotlight where oh we're different and that's a good thing, but actually
Hmm.
different isn't a good thing. It's actually a real challenge. No matter who you are, where you're from,
Hmm.
different is
Hmm.
it's going against the grain of society. What they expect you to be. Or sometimes not even that. I'm not going against society. I'm trying to fit in. But then people want to make me stick out, if that makes sense.
Mm, That's as we say in the States, that's a bar right there. You just said it.
Wow, there you go. Well, you could use that one because, I don't mind songwriting, I don't mind doing my thing, but, I think for me, it's about community too, and carrying
Yeah.
that weight for your community and representing your own community and
hmm
your country, which is really important too. How's it
You're
been
right.
over for you, and how do you think things are going?
I'm sorry, can you repeat one more time?
How's it been over there for you, and how do you think things are going?
Ooh, yeah. That's a lot. It's a loaded question. No 2 days are alike these days here in the States. There's always, you kind of wake up and you're just like, okay, what happened now? Or what do we have to look forward to today? I think for me, in as much as I have to be mindful of everything that's going on, I also, I still have to live my life and I still have to, even going back to the music aspect. There's still a lot that I want to accomplish. There's still projects I'm working on. There's still, shows that I want to do and things of that nature that, those won't stop despite everything that's happening. And at some point, I just kind of have to sort of have a little bit of tunnel vision and say, okay, I'm going to focus on the things that I know I'm capable of controlling. And so, not that I'm blocking everything out, but most days I kind of just sort of approach it as, okay, what's the goal going to be for today? It's going to be to try to book a particular show or work on something that can lead to some shows or some other opportunities musically in the long run. So I'm going to spend, a little bit of time focusing on that. Hence how we are, approaching this conversation today, through the engagement and just being able to kind of reach out and find opportunities, for those who are able to provide them. And so, if in as much as I try to at least be knowledgeable of everything that's happening in the country, I also don't want it to overly consume me to the point where it takes me off of the road that I'm looking to travel.
That's the problem. It's like filtering all that stuff out. And, I
Yeah.
think it's being an artist today because you've got social media, you've got to focus on that, you've got to do, and I don't have a team. Everything I do is me, myself, and I. Or,
Yeah.
that's a good thing because they don't get a slice of the pie. But at the same time, that's hard
Right.
work. And it's full
Yeah.
time, it's non-stop. And I'm working in all these different time zones. So it can be
Yeah. I
tricky.
know the feeling. I know the feeling.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're like, okay, what time is that? Okay, I can do this. So I know
Oh,
what it's like.
I need all these clocks up on the walls, really. I should have one of these little offices with all the different time zones up. That'll be
Oh
really,
yeah. Yeah.
that'll save
Yeah.
so much time. Um,
Mhm.
but I love it, and I can meet people like yourself, and I think this is part of it. It's about connection. It's about meaningful relationships. I think a lot of people have forgotten that today.
Very true. Very true. And that's a big component of who I am and how I approach, just every aspect of my career. It is built on relationships and really being able to kind of build and find connections and hopefully continue to grow from there and, find even more, even deeper connections based on that. So yeah, that is an important aspect of how I approach really life in general. I thrive on building relationships and really kind of creating, positive interactions with people. And I'm always trying to look for the good in people as well.
Absolutely, I always do that, and I don't really judge. I'm not a judgy person, to be fair. I just treat people how I want to be treated. I think that's always the best way, isn't it?
Exactly. No question about it.
Ever suffered from discrimination and harassment when you've been in music or even in sports as well? Like over in the United States, I think the UK follows the US in a lot of ways, but
hmm
we don't have the same political background, like the segregation or the other bits. But
hmm
that's filtered over here, and we emulate the US a lot for some reason, but they don't have the same struggles that the
hmm
US and some of my family are African American, so I
hmm
understand that. But I just think sometimes the UK is a bit of a copycat when it comes to the US and politics. For
mm
some,
Did I lose you?
no, I'm still here. What do you think?
Okay. I'm sorry. Sorry about that. So, it's layered. Because you've got the issues around race.
Yeah.
Then you've got issues around segregation. Then you've got issues around the other phrase. I'm blanking on the phrase right now, but just kind of how people sort of approach their own, I think, kind of of thoughts and ideas about who they are and who they perceive other people to be. And yeah, some of it is rooted in race. Some of it is rooted more so, I think, in just kind of segregation and not being as exposed to other cultures as much. Yeah, have I experienced it? Yes, I have. And even today, it's interesting because while I'm in a an industry as well as my primary interest is in a genre that is largely segregated by race. Um, I'm also not exclusive to that. And
Yeah.
so, like for example, if someone comes up to me and say, "Hey, what type of music do you do?" I might lead with, I'm really, R&B and jazz and pop and hip hop are kind of like the foundations, but it's not exclusive to me.
Exactly.
There are other areas that I'd be interested in going into, but then there's also a racial and a segregation element that goes into it as well. I think about a Beyonce and what type of reception she got when she did Cowboy Carter, and it's kind of rooted in a lot of that. And
It's
yeah,
really isn't it?
until the United States finally decides it wants to address its issue with race, we're probably not going to get much further than we are, and I don't anticipate it happening in my lifetime.
Yeah.
But at the very least, we from a musician standpoint, as a music community, um, there are areas where we can find that there is some, I'll say, integration kind of on its surface. There are areas where, you might find, people who are, on, say, a pop record and you see people from different types of backgrounds, or, if you're in, say, a jazz type of environment where you see people from different types of backgrounds. But even then, you go to certain cities, you go to certain venues, and, I think about even here in Atlanta where, there are some clubs where if you are going because you want to listen to a certain genre of music, you kind of know not only which club to go to and what to expect to hear, but sometimes what part of the city you're going to go into and what you expect from there. In fact, I got invited to go to an event um, coming up on Friday. I just got this invitation a couple of hours ago. And, you know, I know what to expect. I know where it's going to be. And in my mind, I have to kind of think about how, if I decide to attend this event, how I'm going to approach doing so, knowing that there, I probably, I may not be the only person that looks like me, but I'll probably be one of the only few that looks like me. And so there's a whole other layer of kind of a mental focus that I have to kind of prepare for just to kind of go into that space that in some other areas I don't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
And it's just something that it sticks with me, and I think it sticks with a lot of people too.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I'm so sorry you have to deal with that today even over in the States and in Atlanta where it's a very multicultural society. And I think that's part of the problem, isn't it? And I don't have a problem with immigration or people doing what they have to do, and I don't mind where anyone's from. That's not the problem for me at all. I think it's just about treating people with dignity and respect and
Right,
understanding that, right? And treating humans as humans.
right,
Always
right,
done.
right.
Um, so, what would you like to see improve in the next few years, especially in music, entertainment, sports? What could we do better? How could we make the industry a better place for everybody?
Well, I think for one, we there's a big focus on just making money.
Mm,
And I would like to see, and not that we don't want to make money, of course we do, but I'd
unfortunately,
like to see us get back to where we're really just focused on making music for the love of doing music,
mhm,
you know, um, or even from an artist standpoint, writing music not because you think this particular style is popular right now or this producer hit, so now you have to emulate their style.
Totally.
Good music is good music. A great song is going to be number one because
Yeah.
it's a great song, regardless of how slow it is, regardless of, who's singing it or what little nuance in the background is taking place. And so I hope that we get to a point where we just approach, again, just making music just for the love of it. Um, even before that,
I've always done
uh,
it. That's the problem. I've never done it because I didn't love it. I've always done it because I loved it.
yeah. See, and so have I. So have I.
Yeah.
And even before that, this kind of goes back to, a little bit to what I was saying earlier, being able to incorporate teaching music in school. The US has gotten away from that a little bit. They focus a lot on the primary subjects, but not as much on really developing our true creative selves. So you don't see a lot of art, you don't see a lot of music, you don't see a lot of physical education as much as you do kind of this focus on testing to make sure that you're proficient in math or in science in those areas. So I hope that we can go back more to teaching music because for a lot of popular songs that are out today, a lot of times it's someone, and it's great that technology is a thing, but a lot of people can just kind of just go buy a computer or go buy a phone, tap into a beat maker. Next thing you know, they're playing around with it, and then 5 minutes later, they got a beat. An hour later, they got a rapper or a singer that's doing something on it, and then 2, 3 days from now, you release the song, and then it becomes popular. Again, taking nothing away from that, but I think if we can go back to teaching music and teaching kids how to understand various musical elements that they can also incorporate into their musical journey, I think we can get more effective songs. We can get, kind of, just again, just going back into that those deeper types of more, impactful records that we've heard. It's, there's a reason why some of the same songs that were popular in the 60s and the 70s are still popular today. There's elements of those songs that don't go away versus, a popular song that came out 5 years ago that, you may not ever hear again. It was probably, top number one hit in 2016 or something like that. But do you remember the name of it? Versus if you say, hey, name a song from Motown, you can list off a ton of them, in part, not just because we've heard them over and over again, but just because of how great they are, how great the lyrics are, how great the music is, and the like.
Absolutely. Thank you, Terry, for sharing that with us as well. If people want to connect with you, find out more about your music, they want to collaborate, how could they connect with you and find out more?
Yes, yes, I would love to collaborate and connect with others. You can catch me on Instagram and on TikTok at Terry Gresham Music. That's TerryGresham Music. I'm also on YouTube at Terry G TV, and I'm doing a lot of real cool stuff on all those platforms. I've also, as I mentioned, got some new stuff that I'm working on, both some new original music, as well as I'm working on a tribute project that I can't give all the details just yet, but I'm really, really excited. And it's going to be an amazing tribute show that's being put together by an MD of one of these legendary Motown artists that I was just kind of
Yeah,
referring to. So it's going to be awesome.
I better get some exclusives. I hope you send some over because I'd love to listen to them. Congratulations. Thank you
Again,
for your time. We've
thank you.
got 2 minutes left because I'm on the freebies. I just want to say, what you've shared with us has been awesome. Sorry for being late. Sorry I've got a bit of a cold. Wishing you all the best, and I hope it all goes well.
Thank you so much. I appreciate again the opportunity to be able to chat with you. This was an awesome conversation. Definitely will not be the last. And I promise you, once I get some of my new music and those new projects up, you will definitely know. And hopefully get a chance to come over to the UK and over to Europe and do some things. That's part of the plan too, is to be able to
Wait,
go
wait,
over
to the
to
US.
Europe and make things happen.
Go to the US. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. I'm always coming over to the US. US
Yeah.
is, how can I not?
Yes. Yes. So I'm just very excited.
I'll speak to you soon. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Bye.